Hey everyone, it's Agranath here, and here for another video. I came across this article on stuff.co.nz, so another one of these left-wing media organisations in New Zealand that keep pushing the left-wing narrative. Um, so this might interest some people that are in New Zealand. Also, if you happen to be watching from outside of New Zealand, this probably applies to what's happening in whatever country you are in as well. So this article is about the state of pay for women in sport on International Women's Day by Zoe George. Unfortunately, um, she kind of misses the main point of why women in sport are not paid as much as the men. I wonder what that is. Can you guess what that might be? Let's have a read. Pay disparity is still vast as the Mind the Gap ethnic and gender pay gap registers launched on international. So yes, in New Zealand, all companies, not all companies, I think it's voluntary, have to report their ethnic and gender pay gap. Um, Now, I don't know how this actually works, where it's for the whole company, it's not like an average, but you can't compare across all the different jobs, right? You know, if females are more in secretarial roles and males are more in managerial roles, then obviously the men are going to have a higher pay rate than women. Right now, there could be a reason why women are not getting into managerial roles, but from what I can see, there are a lot of female managers that are actually out there. So how they actually calculate this, I have no idea, but I guess we'll have to see. No major sports body has joined the register yet. So yep, they're going to have a go at this major sports bodies. Outside sport, Pākehā women, so that's white women, have an 11% gap, Asian women 17%, Māori women 19%, and 27% for Pasifika women, according to Mind the Gap. And I don't really believe a lot of those figures anyway, because it's all made up to fit their narrative, in my opinion. But you could believe differently. Within sport, it's larger. In domestic cricket, it's 88 to 100% for women playing in the T20 Super Smash competition. So that's the small format cricket competition, who play the same format in the same conditions on the same day as the male counterparts. Again, never mentions the big thing about why males are paid more than females. And I'm sure you know what this is. It's because people pay to go and see the males rather than the females. Right? Because males prefer to watch males playing sport because they're faster, they're more skillful, they have more power than females. It's just the way it is. It's just biology, right? Nothing against females. You'll get the odd female that can maybe compare with an average male, but when you compare the very top female against the very top male, that's just not going to be a comparison, right? So of course they're going to be paid less because they're not earning as much money. You stupid woman, Zoe George, whoever you happen to be. I know you probably know this, but you don't put it into your article because you're being disingenuous. And this is the standard of reporting that we now have in New Zealand. It's absolutely atrocious. Because it doesn't fit the narrative to say that women are paid less because they make less money, because that absolutely shoots their argument completely out of the water, because you earn what you can, you get what you can earn, right? So what you need to do is make yourselves better, get more people watching your games, and then you'll earn more. Same thing. You can see that in the NBA versus the WNBA in America. The NBA makes millions and millions of dollars. The WNBA, the women's NBA, loses millions of dollars. And so the men's competition is subsidizing the women's competition, and they're bleating about not getting paid as much as the men when they're not even bringing enough money to break even on their own competition. Same thing goes for the woman, and this journalist is just so disingenuous. At international level, the White Ferns, that's a female cricketer, have a retainer between 44,000 and 64,000. Black Caps retainer start at 100,000. That's because the men produce more income than the women. Can you not get this through your thick head, Zoe George? I'm sure you can get it through your thick head, but you're just being disingenuous. You don't want to say it. Both New Zealand Cricket and the Players Association were unable to discuss gender and ethnic pay gaps as player master agreements negotiations are underway. Agreements for men and women expire in July. As men play 3 formats and women only 2, and with more opportunities for men to play on the international domestic scene, it's likely the gap will remain. Well, there you go. Men are playing more formats than women, so they're going to be paid more because they bring more money in. So why don't you just say that? For staff, New Zealand Cricket said they endorsed pay parity in a recent study conducted by the organisation that showed that women staffers are being paid slightly more than the men for doing the same work. Oh my God, where's the equality now? Right? New Zealand Cricket were unable to provide the study to staff. Well, let's say we'll take New Zealand Cricket's word for it. So you should be banging the drum saying that the men staffers should be paid exactly the same as the women staffers. Right? That's what you should be doing, because it should all be about quality, but no, it isn't. It's about equity now. You want to be paid the same as men, but not generating as much income or not doing the same amount of work to generate that income. In football, in 2018, the governing body agreed to equal working conditions, closing the gender pay gap for international players. This followed reports of female players leaving the game because they could not afford to represent New Zealand. Well, that's just the way it is, because you're not bringing any money in, are you? In a statement to staff, New Zealand Football said, for staff, due to the small size of the organisation, it is challenging to compare like-for-like data. We are aware that this is a serious issue in the workplace and strive to make football a place where everyone is given equal opportunity to build a career in the game. You can't pay everyone the same. You have to allow opportunities to earn equal amounts, and then it's up to the individuals to actually do that. We are aware of Mind the Gap, and while not currently members, we fully stand behind their principles. More wokeism from the New Zealand Sports Organ. Just say that the women don't bring enough income in as the men, and so the men are subsidising the women. Just say that. Sports organisations. In rugby, Super Rugby Pacific retainers from 75,000 to 195,000, with regular All Blacks earning above that on a tiered scale, so that's for the men. Super Rugby Opiki, whatever that is, female players are understood to receive approximately 6,000 for the 16-day tournament. They're only playing 16 days. They're not generating any income. The men are subsidising you. You should be happy that you're even getting $6,000. Internationally, the sevens, men and women, are on a nearly equal footing, but not for the 15s. Again, it's just because you can guarantee that the women rugby players in the sevens competitions are not bringing as much money as the men, and the men will be subsidising them. But no one ever mentions this, do they, Zoe George? There she goes, there she is. She's got an email. I'm going to email her in a minute after I've done this recording. Blackfern's base trainer is about 35,000, with the highest paid players earning approximately 120,000. Appearance fees and other benefits are added on top. So that's the female rugby players. So they actually can earn quite a bit. For All Blacks, top players earn currently 1 million plus, which is due to increase with New Zealand Rugby's new Silver Lake deal. So of course, All Black top players are going to earn 1 million plus because they're friggin' All Blacks. They win 80% of their matches, not something that the women are doing. They bring in millions and millions of dollars to the New Zealand Rugby Union, not what the women are doing. So no wonder they're paying a huge amount more. In fact, female Blackfern players, the All Blacks are subsidising your pay, and they're also subsidising all the domestic competition that are running in New Zealand as well, because the All Blacks generate most of the money for the New Zealand Rugby Union. At domestic level, the gap is 100%. Men get paid to play NPC by their provincial unions, while women in the Farah Palmer Cup are considered amateur and aren't paid. Because no one gives a shit about the women's competition or wants to go and watch them. Oh my God, New Zealand Rugby has a diversity and inclusion manager. Said that while she could not comment about pay gaps on field, the organisation is committed to undertaking pay, because you can't get pay gaps. You can't reduce pay gaps on field because it depends on what you earn. Again, this journalist, I can't even call it a journalist, right? This opinion writer is so disingenuous. NZ are still considering whether to release that information to the public and if it will join Mind the Gap. Don't do it, New Zealand Rugby. You don't need to. Just say that we will pay our players based on what they earn for New Zealand Rugby, and they get paid commensurate to that. The analysis will be looking at New Zealand Rugby as a organisation. We want to make sure that we are keeping our own house clean before we go and set expectations for others. We need to make sure we're asking the right questions. Blah blah blah. More wokeism. More woke stuff. Rugby is a male popular environment. There are plenty of powerful and influential women in our rugby environment, and men have an opportunity to step up to any discrimination, any bias they see in our environment. Most men are related to at least one woman, so we're all in this together and we need each other. I'm not going to carry on reading the rest of it. It's just more rubbish from this particular person. But again, nowhere in this article does it ever talk about the actual money that these groups of people generate. By far and away, the men earn the majority of money for the respective sporting unions. They subsidise the women's game, and the women are complaining they're not getting paid as much as men. You know what will happen? The men will stop playing in New Zealand and go overseas where they can earn a lot more money than what they can earn here, and then eventually rugby will die, and then the women won't be earning anything because they won't be generating any money. And just before we finish the video, don't forget that here in New Zealand, netball, which is played predominantly by women, is a reasonably larger sport, and it does provide a professional environment for women's female players playing netball. But surprisingly, there is also a men's netball team. So netball is kind of like basketball, but different. It's kind of like the poor cousin of basketball, if you're not from New Zealand or Australia or whatever. So the New Zealand men's netball team make hardly any money. I don't know if they make any money at all. They don't get, I think they might just be purely amateur. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, notice that this article again doesn't make any mention that the men's netball team does not get paid anywhere near close to what the Silver Ferns, the women's netball team, makes, because the women's netball team is fully professional, whereas the men's netball team is amateur. But she doesn't mention that, because again it blows her argument out of the water, because the men's netball team doesn't make any money, because men don't want to see men playing netball. They'd rather see men playing basketball, which is a much faster and much more interesting game to watch. But again, if she was being totally honest, she should have mentioned that there is a pay gap for the men's netball team and the women's netball team. But she doesn't want to see the women having to subsidize the men. That is exactly why she doesn't bring this up. Anyway, well, that's it for this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you're welcome to give it a thumbs down. If you like my content, please subscribe, and if you feel like sharing to anyone that you know, that would be awesome as well. And hopefully I will catch you in the next video.